Um, she came just kind of right after the time of St. Thomas Aquinas. So St. Thomas Aquinas revolutionized theology and spirituality with a mental framework that was structured on the soul as an intellect and a will, and had the Greek, incorporated the best of the Greek world of philosophy into a way of understanding and systematizing our faith. So what St. Thomas Aquinas presented versus what St. Augustine presented is a lot different, okay? And St. Catherine was influenced much more by St. Augustine. And because that was in the Dominican order at the time, that was much more the spirituality. The sources would be in St. Augustine. And we're incredibly influenced by the understanding of the person as an intellect and a will, and so it's like we just have to come to recognize, be taught the truth, and then we choose the truth. And what can happen in there is if it's not understood well, a very flat Catholicism or Christianity, in the sense of just like it can become very stoic. It can become very academic. So stoic, that means without feeling, without passion. So what Augustine was all about was the heart. I mean, not all about, but like heavily, like an understanding of who we are made in God's image is with the heart. And so I've shared this with you before at the cathedral when they, before the renovation, up in the dome, they had the four Western fathers, four Western fathers of the church, and one of them was St. Augustine. So St. Augustine, St. Jerome, I remember there too. And the image with St. Augustine was he had his heart in his hand. It was powerful, just communicating. It's like, and it was almost like he's led by his heart, and it was on fire. So the imagery is super important, and as you are recognizing here in the just reading these pages, like there's so much imagery that she uses, right? And she switches from one image to another, and it gets confusing. It's dizzying, kind of. But the importance of imagery for us is body, soul, as you know, having a body and a soul, that we can only come to the invisible through the visible. We can only come to the invisible, the unseen God, through the visible. And so these images are super important to help us to relate, to connect. That spirituality is something. So we have this that we have the heart, and with the heart, we're talking about the affections, the feelings, and actually having feelings at different levels. So feelings at the bodily level, and you can think about that a restful nap, right, on a soft bed, if you like soft bed, a hot bath, right? Those feel good on the skin. There's feelings there. Okay, that would be one category of affections. They're a good conversation with someone. There's a felt connectedness with that person, right? And we would say affections even extend to, and maybe especially extend even to one's relationship with God, that there's a felt connection with God. And so this is why she keeps going back to, like, one of her key figures is desire, holy desire, right? And holy desire has to do with the heart. You notice a lot of the times we don't talk about, well, we talk about it more now, I think, but maybe more in the past we talked about the will, just the pure will, and raw will and choice, and like that's what the dignity of a human person lies in. Desire speaks of something more than just will. It touches on the will, of course, but desire. How would you describe the subtleties between desire and will. When you think about the word will or willpower,
Desire is stronger.
okay, there's a force about desire. Yeah.
An action is needed.
What's that?
In desire.
Yeah.
An action is needed.
An action is needed in desire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the will is more from the mind and the desire is more from the heart.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when we talk about desire in the spiritual realm, it's always connected to the will. And so in the tradition, like for mental prayer, meditation, the system and process for meditation in the tradition, which unfortunately very few of us are familiar with anymore, is like it engaged the intellect, the heart, and the will. And so the intellect is concerned with considerations, like the subject that I'm going to reflect upon. So like, for example, like in one of the paragraphs that we're going to be talking about today is like, why did God make us? To actually share and enjoy his goodness, like, holy cow. So to take time to reflect upon that. And then the idea then is you start with that consideration. Okay, this is a process for mental prayer, okay? The traditional process for mental prayer. You start with the consideration, okay, what's the subject matter? And you want to also, in the traditional steps of meditation, a desired grace. Notice I said desired grace from the meditation. So you choose the subject matter for your meditation. So for example, we're going to be talking here about like how God made us. So my desired grace is I want to relish more the truth of how God made us, right? So then you move from the consideration, you're reflecting upon it, and as you're reflecting upon it, what happens is that there's movements of the heart, and the movements of the heart are called affections, and they can be spontaneous, such as I'm listening or reading something, watching something, and they just, without intending it, like a deliberate action, I'm just caught up. Wow. Ah, we've all had that experience, right? In regards to spiritual things. And maybe they haven't been like Catherine says, in regards to like the first page that we read today for today's was the fire that within that, is this page 57 if you're following? The fire within that soul blazed higher. And she was beside herself as if drunk. Okay, we may not have had it at that intensity. I mean, except for Kit.
Right.
But we have had, all of us have had surges and movements and we're talking about holy desire here. Okay, so that's a spontaneous kind of affection and movement, and that's kind of what's happening to her. With her, this experience of feeling drunk, as if she were drunk, and this fire blazing higher. Those are spontaneous movements that are drawn out by the object, the other. Okay, but you can also have, when it comes to the affections, because it is connected to the will. Because we have affections of the will and affections of the body. So it's all about, the affections are all about feelings. So the feelings that come from the body are going to be automatic, right? That's just the animal nature of us. And then when it comes to the affections of the will, they can be either drawn by other, or they can be voluntary feelings or affections. Like, so what would that mean? So I could come to prayer, and I start with a voluntary affection. So I'm not like feeling on fire for love of you, God, or like, or maybe even being drawn. Maybe it's just like it's experiencing just a flatness flat affect. You know what I mean by that, right? And so when you're around with somebody with a flat affect, it's like, something wrong, or am I not right? Right? Because the will is free, and it has its own proper feelings called affections, you can have voluntary affections. And so I have a flat affect today towards God in prayer. I can come to prayer and say, Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I trust in you. Right? Those are voluntary affections. They're affection, right? And I may not be feeling anything, because ultimately the value in that doesn't lie in whether I'm actually feeling pleasure from it. I mean, that's important, but you don't want to reduce it to just like, I'm going to choose to love when I feel like loving. Does that make sense? I mean, like, kids to their parents. Parents have a lot of affection to their children in regards to, like, they would tell them they love them and they would feel it, right? Kids, okay, I love you too. You know what I'm saying? Like, they mean it with their will. I mean, like, not, you guys are all holy, so, you know. But I did it with my mom. She was always, you know, at the end of a phone call, she's like, I love you. I'm like, I love you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's an act of the will, but like, I'm actually feeling kind of an aversion to that. I don't know, whatever in my makeup is like that. But like, that's more common with kids. Just look at middle school kids. I mean, it's like, Mom, don't even be around. I'm getting out here, right? Okay, and then the way that this would work then, with the affections are a very important part. Then once you hit the affections, okay, so there's a type of connection there with affectivity and feeling. Then I move to make a resolution. That's the work of the will. So that's why at the end of meditation, you don't leave it with the affection. Oh, I've been moved and I feel drawn to give myself more, or surrender myself more to you, Lord. And then I leave without a resolution. It goes, St. Francis of Sales, it goes nowhere. So the will is connected to the resolution at the end of mental prayer. Does that make sense? Okay, so anyway, I was just incorporating the traditional process for mental prayer, beginning with the intellect, which makes considerations, and then a specific grace that you're seeking, to affections, whether they be spontaneous or voluntary, that's incorporated into the prayer. So I come to meet with you, and how are you doing? You know, like there's affectivity that's communicated, and then I end always with like, now what? And that's the act of the will. And so I always want to take away a resolution. Otherwise, the prayer bears very, very little fruit, right? It doesn't change anything. Okay. So you notice, this, for Augustine then, the heart, and so a primary driver for Augustine, his like lens for the spiritual life and relationship with God and actual happiness in his whole search is like, he is one restless desire, isn't he? And so Catherine's very familiar with this, and this is the lens that she used to love to listen to the preachers, the Dominican preachers, right? So she's being fed this kind of mindset. So it's informing her, you know, the way that she's hearing and what she's seeing, the revelations that she's giving. So holy desire. And what's St. Augustine's most famous line?
My hearts are restless.
They rest in you. So what are we talking about there, right? Our hearts are restless. We're talking about desire, and that's why she talks about holy desire. What makes it holy? What makes desire holy? That it's, well, you can have desires for all kinds of things, right? So, I can have a desire to be without pain. I can have desire for coffee. I can have a desire for, yeah.
So it'd be a desire a holy desire would be never strictly concerned only with the body.
Yeah. A holy desire holy desire always has God as
All right.
the ultimate good or object.
Amen.
Okay? God is the object. Right? We talk about the object of desire. And when we talk about holy desire, we also mean like not just God is the object of desire, that God has his proper place in our desire. So, which means it's like God is not just one thing, one object among other objects, that our hearts are restless until they rest in him. So that means that God is my ultimate desire. Like, I'm clear that I can only find satisfaction in him, in God, and his paths. That's the only way. And so what's beautiful about this is that it's not the rejection of other desires that in my life. Okay, that means I can't desire anything else. That means I can't take joy, because desire seeks to find satisfaction. Right? And Mick Jagger said he can't get that because he didn't have that, right? And I'm betting from last week that the 72-year-old Golden Bachelor is not gonna find it. I didn't did any of you watch the Golden Bachelor this last week? Okay. Yeah, you liars. Liars.
We're gonna watch it on Sunday.
Okay.
I had to look at the trailer.
So my guess is that he's not going to find his ultimate satisfaction, right? Because as she talks about in these pages that we read for today, is that the desire that the way that God made us is that our desire can only be fulfilled in him. So our ultimate desire has to be in God. That's where our supreme happiness. Okay. But that's not to the exclusion of every other desires. It's that the lower level desires, like the desire for friendship, the desire for give me other good things.
Good food.
Good food, relationship,
A dog to walk.
a dog to walk, right? Meaningful work.
Good health.
All of these things you see are not they're not problematic. They're problematic when they displace the ultimate desire, the object. Does that make sense? So, and that's one way that the evil spirit will work on a person who God is wanting more from, who is calling to something higher, to like a very holy desire that's much more on fire. What he will do is the evil spirit. He can't work on your will purely. He can only work on in a secondary way through the objects that your will is set on. Okay, so if God is calling me to certain thing, and then I involved in this other thing, and I haven't, so that other thing could be good, but I'm distressed, and I'm like, oh, these thoughts are that God, in order to turn and follow God in this way, I'll have to lose all of this. So that's a common temptation. It's like, if I follow God more closely, he'll take away everything. And so that's a rejection of like, or that's a extreme in the sense of like that God, he's not asking us to give up everything. He's asking us to properly order everything. What else with that? Yeah, okay, and the way the evil spirit would work, so, because what's happening probably here is that there's an excessive attachment to some temporal good. And so he can work on that object, because my desire is caught up with that. Whatever good it might be. I mean, that's the only way. It has to be some type of good. And it could be like a really a really high good. It could even be in regards to my prayer life, that if God's drawn me to contemplative prayer, and over the years I've had like just great fruit from meditation, all right, and there's a sense of accomplishment in doing my meditation. He's calling, so which is good, all the meditations is good. So even in my relationship with God, I can have an attachment to that because it's like I accomplished it. As the Lord's invited me into contemplative prayer, which is going to mean a dying to that, so I'm going to be stranded and lost because now my prayer, I don't get anything out of my prayer. The evil spirit can use that attachment to mental prayer to hold us back from seeking God alone. Does that make sense? And this is what the dark nights of the soul is always about. It's about a purification of these attachments, so that God ultimately becomes the ultimate desire. Okay, so let's go to paragraph 21. So that will be on page 58. All right, so she likes to use the word road and bridge, and then there's going to be a whole section, a whole thesis on or treatment of the bridge. That's what we'll be coming up upon. And so God created us, and He created us in such a way with a free will that we had free choice, and that there was a road to God, and the road was easy. So we're talking about before the fall of Adam and Eve. And so righteousness was easy. And today, in the Magnificat for today, if you guys use that, there's an introduction from Pope Benedict XVI. It says, he defines righteousness as the observance of the right path shown by God. You ever kind of wonder, like, in the scriptures, we hear the word righteousness a lot. It's like, what is righteousness? It's the observance of the right path shown by God. Right? That's what. And righteousness is the Old Testament word for holiness. Okay? So, what do we hear about Joseph? He was a righteous man, right? So Joseph is still in the, Old Testament transitioning into the New Testament. And Paul uses the word righteousness some, all right? But there's a transition into the holy ones. All right, so on paragraph 21, I have told you that I have made a bridge of my word. So here's another image for us. I want you to realize, my children, that by Adam's sinful disobedience, the road was so broken up that no one could reach everlasting life. So the way that God originally made us, that before the fall, we know that Adam walked with God in the garden, and so, right, and talked. Eternal life was there. He was participating and sharing in eternal life. So within our nature was supernaturalized in such a way that we were having direct communion with God. That our mind, our will, our thoughts, our emotions, all of them could be in relationship with God. Not to the exclusion of everything else, right? Because he was also given the care of the creation. And also not to the exclusion of having a mate, right? So God was there, he was walking, but there was still part of something in his nature that was not complete yet. All right, so what happened after original sin? She wants to really get this clear, that it's impossible to find communion with God now, intimacy with God, marriage with God, fulfillment of one's desire in God after original sin. You can't do it on your own effort or power. So the completion, and so what does this look like, or what does this feel like existentially, like in your being, that you're trying to find satisfaction, you're trying to find happiness, but you can't find it, and you keep trying. And if you're doing this unreflectively, you'll go your whole life like this, and you will never find it. But it's what a beautiful revelation about original sin is like, oh wait, you can't get there. The road's washed. So if it's like you can't get no satisfaction, Mick, right? It's because the road's washed out. And here's the complication, because we're made for we're made for this supernatural union, like we're made to share actually and experience life in God. We still have that desire, but the road to get there now is washed away. And so now, because we can't cross over into that, or we can't walk into that, we try to, you can't turn this desire off for God. That means basically what St. Augustine says, we end up, he's good with imagery too, licking the earth. We're trying to find this eternal desire in that heart. We're trying to find satisfaction in all the good things of the earth. So everything other than God. And that's a lot of good things. So it's not just a matter of like, okay, we can't get there anymore, but so we can have natural happiness. It's not even logical, because if you have a desire for eternal more, and the road now to the eternal's cut off, well, I can find my happiness, satisfaction in creating things of the natural world. Well, that would be true if you only had a natural desire that wasn't created and shaped in such a way that it can only be satisfied by finding your happiness in friendship with God, at the level of spouses, because that's kind of the imagery we hear in the Old Testament, right? Spousal love. Wow, that's the intensity. When we say beatitude, that's what we're talking about. That's the type of intimacy that the Lord has made us for. So guess what? The road's gone. I still have that desire. I'm in bad shape. Nope, not it. And then if I'm ignorant, I'm going to end up destroying myself to try to find it. And don't you think there's some kind of a connection between the despair, the suicide, the misery, in really an age where there's never been, even though there's lots of poverty, in an age there's never been such opportunity for natural happiness. Like, just compared to what my grandfather had to what his grandfather had. And what my grandfather had is like nothing to what I mean, like, he was living out of the Great Depression still. So it's like, and now I can have DoorDash bring all my meals, right? I'm never in want, but there's never enough. So this really puts us in a bad place. But there's something maybe beautiful about what's going on too, is that this is the way it worked for the people in the Old Testament. It's like God let them go according to their desires, and then they experienced their misery. They can't, and then they radically turned to God and said, "What? Help!" But so anyway, God is not a neutral reality for us. In a sense, it's like, okay, God's out of the picture now. We still have an eternal desire. Okay. So this is what she's getting at with the fall, with Adam. The road's gone. Okay. How bad is this? The road was so broken up that no one could reach everlasting life. It was so broken up that no one could reach everlasting life. Stop. This is the object. All right. Since they had no, well, I'm halfway down on paragraph 21, page 58. Since they had no share in the good for which I had created them, okay, we're going to get to some exciting stuff about how we're made here. They did not give me the return of glory they owed me, and so my truth was not fulfilled. What is this truth? Okay, here it is. That I had created them in my image and likeness. Okay, we've all heard that. What does that mean? So that they might have eternal life. Okay, sharing in my being. Okay, and enjoying my supreme eternal tenderness and goodness. Holy cow. So we all have friends. And so when you have a good friendship, it's a true experience because your soul's actually made for relationship. Like we're relational beings. And so when you have a good friendship, and there's something and you don't have this all the time with your friends, but like, and there's an exchange going on, it's like, it's pretty powerful experience. You're actually sharing in that other person. It's not something like you're being made up. It's like we're made in such a way that we can receive another person, actually receive them. And so we know this on the physical level. And so with bodies, of course, that bodies can be shared. So that's kind of a sacrament or a sign of what also then happens at a deeper level on the spiritual level, and a relational level. And so it's like, and like I said before, it's like no one can live without relationship. As Pope Benedict XVI talks about hell, like hell is about living in complete isolation. So that's the most despairing of all states. And you think about like too, it's all connected. It's not like a random punishment, hell. What happens is if I'm being absorbed, my desire is being absorbed, and I'm trying to quench it in material things and take the place of God. What's my actual experience? The more I do this, the more I'm attached to money. I'm going to make more money, or more I'm attached to work. What is that? Does that put me into greater relationship with people?
No.
No, it leads me to greater isolation. So I'm listening to Elon Musk's book that just came out, and Walter Isaacson. He's a great biographer. Anyway, I'm listening to it on Audible, and so like he's a genius in what he's able to accomplish and how he motivates people often in a manic and violent way at times, but and what he's been able to achieve. But so he has 11 children. He's had 3 wives. He has had he can't maintain a relationship, and so he's fixated on getting to Mars and a few other things. And so okay, that's a good desire, but the more he manically pours himself into that desire, it leads to greater what? Emptiness and isolation, right? And in fact, the way that it destroys is he gets so fixated. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the book on as far as SpaceX and his and the mission to Mars. He gets into a manic mode with the work, and he just comes in and just immediately fires people right and left, and it's completely rational for him because he's so fixated on this goal. But what the problem is being fixated on this lower good ends up leaving you in more and more, ever more isolation. So you actually start creating your own hell on earth. So hell is not just an external punishment, if that makes sense. You get what you want, God doesn't send anybody to hell.
We choose.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we talked about last week, right away in the catechism, it says like, that desire for God, it can be explicitly rejected, but that's probably not, and so like, to hell with you, God, and we could get to that point, of course, but I would say that's rare. The way that this most often rolls is what the catechism says, that desire is either forgotten or overlooked. And so the most intense desire could be forgotten over a while. We see this a lot with married couples. As that they get taken up with the duties of preoccupations of work and kids, and then they realize as they become empty nesters that they had totally forgot about their relationship. Right? It can get to that point. So and what's the consequence? They don't love each other anymore. The scary thing is like that's how intimate that God made our relationship with Him in such a way that it's not an external punishment. We, by our desire, we can just simply overlook Him. We can just simply forget Him. And over good things, right? Okay. Isn't this something to think about, like that we can actually enjoy God's supreme tenderness and goodness? So Teresa of Avila would say, it's like, okay, there might be some people that you know that their hearts actually enjoy their prayer. I mean, like there's a fullness in there, a delight, and you may not experience like any of that. She would just say, that doesn't mean it's not possible. She said, just be happy for that person, and don't think that you're in a bad place because you're not at this time enjoying it. Because you have to deal with exceptions. We're made to actually enjoy it with our hearts, but there can be all kinds of blocks in regards to the affectivity. So just on the natural level, if I'm concerned with something a serious issue at the parish, and I go to spend a weekend with my family, and it's a weekend we've been planning for a long time, I would anticipate really it's gonna flourish, enjoy it. This thing comes up at the parish that's a crucial, critical situation that can take my heart in such a way that I don't feel anything when I come to the family gathering, right? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so there can be a million, it's hard. I mean, and like, don't make this the norm of like, there's not gonna be feeling or enjoyment in your relationship with God. No, God's constantly working to free you from the obstacles that prevent you from enjoying the relationship with God. I'm just thinking about like, it could be as simple as this. Like my dad was raised up in a very duty-driven, legalistic, what we would call legalistic, like way of living your faith. You're faithful, right? And so it's really focused heavily on the will. And so he's dealing with decades and decades of this, and so so my psyche can be so taken up or preoccupied with that way of who God is and how to relate to God. And so there's like this prayer is something I have to do. It's like, and that's talking to me constantly, that I don't feel like I have any freedom in my relationship with God. And if I don't have any freedom, then it's not possible to enjoy. Does that make sense? So there can just be there's a lot of things we have to be healed from in regards to holistic joy. Holistic joy. Okay. All right, so she gets into like what does what does the effects of original sin bring about? So the one, two, three, 4 paragraphs down, this sin sprouted thorns and troublesome vexations. My creatures found rebellion within themselves, for as soon as they rebelled against me, they became rebels against themselves. So it's like, God is not something out here, and we can choose to be with him or not, and then we're over here. Know that we're made in such a way that dysfunction here leads to dysfunction here. So think about like the family. If the husband and wife are not tracking, does that bring disturbance to the whole family?
Yeah.
Can you just like, oh, like couples that get divorced are like, it's better for the kids, and okay, and maybe there's circumstances that it's better for the kids. I'm not getting into that, but like, I think we have to be careful there because there's a dynamic reality and unit there. It's not like here's this relationship and here's this relationship, and so they're neutral and indifferent to one another. And so as closely tied up as that relationship, even more tied up are we in our relationship with God. That this relationship, not right, messes up everything else. Because I'm either giving too much or too little to everything else. Okay? So, there's a rebellion, the spirit, and they became filthy beasts. All created things rebelled against them. All right? Go to the next paragraph. With sin there came a flood of a stormy river that beat against them constantly. So this, I love that imagery. Like this is what we experience. Like you're normal if that's your experience. That there's difficulties, temptations, trials, lack of inspiration. Like you have a good will, right? But the flesh, all of these different desires and all these different movements are like a flood of a stormy river. A flood came at once, like with sin there came at once the flood of a stormy river. That imagery is powerful for me, just growing up on the farm, because it's like we couldn't get to the point like we were being totally trapped in, like through a heavy rain. But like 2 to 3 of the roads going out, they could be flooded, a stormy flood, right? And Dad would say, like, if there's 2 to 3 inches of water with running water across the road, it'll sweep you, right? And it's something to watch flood waters across the road. You get to really taste that in the country, not so much in the city. But it's like they are powerful and they can destroy everything. And so isn't that some visceral language of like, this is what we experience within ourselves? It's like, as far as like living rightly, living well, like we all want to do, like there is that desire, we're constantly caught up in these floodwaters. And then like, it's, think about if you're in those floodwaters, trying to swim out of floodwaters. Right? Okay, and so if you start to taste this and get this, then you understand the need for the bridge. And that's where we will continue to move on next week. So next week will be the end of this module. And so just finish reading to the end of the dialogue, which is pretty close to the last pages that you read for today. I'm going to be reviewing some different stuff, so it just goes to 63, and then we'll hit the section on the bridge. So an important point here is like today, the takeaway is like, the heart affectivity, feeling for God is a real thing. It's important, and also the reality of what happened because of original sin is that we're in bad state, and this is not a matter of like one feeling guilty, like you did something wrong. Like it's diagnosing the situation. Okay. So the Lord be with you.
And with you.
And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. You guys have a great week.